Growing up in the 70s, I was drawn to three shows: Wonder Woman, Charlie's Angels, and The Bionic Woman. To me, the female protagonist appeared to be intelligent, able-bodied, and independent women who exhibited agency to wield power. As a tomboy, I identified with them, unaware that I had internalized the objectifying gaze of white, heteronormative male writers in their lighthearted, casually condoned culture of rape. They surreptitiously pushed my and generations of young men's buttons. Years later, I discovered that pop culture could also be a guerrilla weapon to reverse engineer harmful narratives. I'm Heidi Boisvert. I'm an artist, scientist, and creative technologist who interrogates the socio-cultural and neurobiological effects of media and technology. Simply put, I study the role the body, the senses, and emotion in human perception and social change. And I'm the founder and creative director of Future Perfect Lab. Future Perfect Lab is a creative agency and think tank that harnesses the power of pop culture, emerging technology, and neuroscience to ignite social change. Today, we're navigating a galaxy of chaotic and contradictory narratives that influence how we think, feel, live, and see ourselves in the world. We've moved from the mass culture of the 70s to a culture of proximity. Influence now comes from anywhere and anyone. Celebrities, politicians, brands, nonprofits co-create and sometimes compete with crowd culture. Because of this, people operate in vastly different narrative ecosystems, which lead to big differences in perception about themselves and the world. And many of these deep cultural narratives are toxic, often promoting harmful ideas about who we are, who belongs, and who does not. As a result, democracy is under attack, mental health is declining, neighbors can't agree on basic facts, and human rights are under assault. Future Perfect Lab is dedicated to transforming toxic narratives through playful and imaginative experiences with the single aim of building a more just and pluralist society, one in which everyone not only belongs, but thrives. As a member of the Pop Culture Collaborative, we believe specific pop culture stories shaped by narrative archetypes carry mental models into mass culture and then gradually spark inciting experiences that compel new behavioral instincts. We catalyze this spark by engineering social justice messages for mass appeal through a multi-pronged feedback loop consisting of creative and research, supported by co-creation workshops and open source tools. On the creative side, we co-create long-term multimedia engagement campaigns in partnerships with social justice organizations and media influencers through multiple touchpoints using games, VR and AR, transmedia storytelling, interactive web, locative media, theater, and more. This could take the form of an alternate reality game to promote human rights, featuring celebs like Victor Garber, an animation to raise awareness about unfair immigration laws by teledeporting Spock, or even location-based augmented reality app to change perceptions around homelessness while simultaneously raising funds to move individuals into actual homes. We kick off each culture change campaign using Play as Process, a multimodal co-creation workshop with a meshwork of influencers around a given issue. Through this four-part process, we move subject matter experts from rational and emotional problem solving towards complex system and embodied design, and eventually rapid prototyping, which enables us to more closely map social issues to story design and interactive mechanics to increase authentic engagement, behavior change, and learning outcomes. On the research side, we conduct media effects and audience research using survey and story coding instruments coupled with biometric and linguistic analysis to inform narrative design, story creation, distribution, and audience engagement plans. Central to this research is our Limbic Lab, a biometric lab and AI system that isolates the narrative ingredients that move us to act. The Limbic Lab consists of two components, a narrative engine and a media machine. The narrative engine takes in and syncs real-time data from brainwaves, biophysical data like heart rate, blood flow, body temperature, and muscle contraction, as well as eye tracking and facial recognition while the subject is viewing or interacting with media content. The media machine uses predictive models and machine learning to automate media production processes. The goal of this research is to find out what combination of narrative ingredients are the most appealing and galvanizing to specific target audiences to enable us, and by extension the field, to create more effective media. We therefore make all of our research instruments, methodologies, and scientific protocols open source for the culture change field. This includes biophysical sensors for measurement and custom Python scripts. And our latest initiative, the Media Genome, will render our database of media imprints accessible to social justice organizations, journalists, media makers, and academics to conduct their own correlation mapping between variables to generate real-time data visualizations. Through this unique and interdisciplinary strategy, we've increased awareness of hot button issues and changed the attitudes of millions of people in 166 countries through inventive one-off culture change campaigns. But we can expand our reach and impact in the future. First, we need to move away from one-off projects with a limited shelf life by mobilizing small, medium, and large-scale social justice organizations to pool resources and unify message frames so that we can radically shift cultural norms and social behaviors. Second, we need to make our research more accessible to increase media literacy. So in addition to building out a front end for the Media Genome, I am collaborating with veteran New York Times journalist Julie Skelfo to develop a podcast series called Get Media Savvy. On both the creative and the research side, what is most needed to scale Future Perfect Lab are strategic partners. We need collaborators like nonprofits, coalitions, and funders from the social justice sector to incubate new culture change campaigns. We also need content creators from film, TV, and game industry to serve as case studies to grow the media genome. And lastly, a research director from the neuroscience community to run the Limbic Lab and design future studies. With your support, we can transform our narrative galaxy together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. That was amazing. Any questions from Ivvet, Janna?
Yeah, I have quite a few, but Janna, I think we probably might be jumping onto the same question, because I was going to come back to the question that Janna actually asked Josie before about if this can be used in ways that you might not have envisaged. And so that was the first thing when I heard changing attitudes. Like, I think the hairs on my neck stood up a little bit in the fear of what could be. So yeah, I just wonder how you explore those ethics around who could use this to change my attitudes, or yours or anyone else's, like what the ethical implications might be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just wondering if you mean specifically using the Limbic Lab, in particular, if you mean the methodology overall. So I'm situated within a community that's called Culture Change. And so there's a network of funders, like Ford Foundation and Open Society Institute, that are interested in using these methodologies as a way of advancing social justice issues and human rights, in particular in the United States, but elsewhere. So we predominantly focus on looking at immigration, racial justice, women's rights, even the environment, Muslim narratives. And part of the impulse behind that is that there aren't a lot of authentic and representational bits of content in the public culture space for those communities. So it's a larger issue of kind of fixing pipelines, but there are many different components within that ecosystem. But in particular, in terms of the Limbic Lab itself, I am very conscious and concerned around the ethics of DARPA or marketing companies or somebody utilizing that particular instrument. So, but I very much believe in the open source community, and part of the thing that I've been exploring is actually writing a new open source license that would take into account the use value, right, of the particular tool, as well as putting together an advisory board to help think about, other ways of circumventing the misuse of the instrument. So ethics is, a huge concern. In fact, I mean, in my TED talk, that's one of the things that I raise is, if you can build a weapon, right? Should you? If you can build something that can be turned into a weapon, should you actually build it? But because I'm so very steeped in the social justice space, and these tools are available for those communities who don't have access to those. We know that like Nielsen Neuro is already making these types of instruments, but communities that in which I work don't necessarily have access to those tools. So that was the impulse behind actually creating it in the first place.
I had a similar human augmentation question. I don't know why this is on my mind. A little stuck. I don't know if you know somebody like Hugh Herr, who does biomechatronics at MIT, augments his limbs and things like this. I just wonder if you've ever thought about this possibility. We've talked about it for ages, but it's never actually happened, that we'll be thinking about augmenting ourselves instead of manipulating our environment. And I'm just wondering if you've thought about that.
Yeah.
Not usually
it seems as though
attached to, but I don't know, today it seems to be stuck in
Yeah, no, I'm glad you raised that. I mean, I think, well, one of the reasons I started working in this area is because, I was making all of this social change stuff, and then I kind of had a crisis of faith about whether or not it was effectual. And so then I decided to try to figure out what can we actually understand and measure. And in the process of doing that, then I started building these kind of like sensors that helped us understand, like, externalize the physiological response patterns, and making, more dance and theater pieces with it. In part, I think what I was trying to understand is the body's intelligence at root. Like, what do we actually know? We spend a lot of research dollars understanding the brain, but we don't know a whole lot about the body's intelligence. And so I think part of what I'm interested in, oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. Technically, the body's part of the brain. Sorry.
Oh, no, I agree. I mean, I believe in a theory of embodied cognition.
I'm going to be Simon Cowell here, and I'm going to have to move us on. I'm so sorry in terms of
Heidi.
I'm like timing. I'm using my British accent to full use. So thank you so much, Heidi. That was so fascinating and important work. So thank you for sharing that with us. So moving on to our next pair, we